Evening, everyone, and welcome to The Next Revolution. We are pro-worker, pro-family, pro-community, and especially pro-America. Well, for once, Chuck Todd had it right this morning.
And we now know that Donald Trump's 2016 election, which gave him 3 Supreme Court picks, all of whom voted to overturn Roe, is easily now among the most consequential ever in our nation's history.
Yes, a hugely consequential week for America, as we saw 2 landmark rulings from the Supreme Court on guns and abortion. Of course, these are among the most emotive and divisive issues in our country. People have deeply held views that go to the core of their identity, their humanity, their faith. But the truth about these rulings, even though they do have immediate real-world consequences, is that they're less about the issues themselves and more about how, and crucially where, we make decisions about the issues. Now, my personal views on abortion and guns are pretty mainstream, according to the polls. You may agree with them, you may not. But I'm just one American out of hundreds of millions. I live in California, as far as I'm concerned, the greatest and most beautiful state in the nation, although right now pretty much the worst run. But that's the right way to think about all this. We are Americans who live in a republic of states, the United States. As you know, I became a citizen just over a year ago. I was incredibly proud to do that because I so admire and revere the idea that America was built on, the idea that is enshrined in the Constitution, decentralized power. No one should be overmighty, not the president, not the Congress, not the federal government, not the bureaucracy, and certainly not a handful of unelected judges. The point of the Supreme Court is not to decide policy on issues like guns or abortion or anything else. Its purpose, explicitly laid out in the Constitution, is to make sure that the laws made by the legislative branch are in line with the Constitution. Furthermore, the Constitution was explicitly designed to guard against pure majority rule. The opinions and the rights of minorities are protected. That's why this difference between a republic and a democracy is so crucial. All those foundational ideas about what kind of country we are and how we should be run are reflected in this week's rulings. People cite polls showing 70% of Americans wanted Roe to stay. Other polls show similar majorities for abortion restrictions that are in line with the Mississippi law that led to this ruling. But the point is, the Constitution protects the rights of the minority. In America, you can't automatically impose the will of the majority on everyone at a national level. That's what the Bill of Rights is all about, the first 10 amendments to the Constitution. They protect individual rights against an overmighty central government. And crucially, in the 10th Amendment, they protect the rights of individual states to decide things for themselves on every issue that is not specifically listed in the Constitution. The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. If you think about it, how else could we successfully run a country as big and diverse as America? The left love talking about diversity, as long as it's not political diversity. When it comes to politics and policy, they hate diversity. They want uniformity. They want to impose one way of doing things, their way of doing things, right across America. That's not just unconstitutional, it's obviously impractical. It undermines the very thing that's helped make America the most successful nation in the history of the world, the opportunity for innovation and experimentation. We saw that with the pandemic. Imagine if the whole country had to suffer California's lockdown lunacy. But no, we had a different and better model we saw in the free state of Florida. If you don't like the policies in your state, well, you can move or you can fight to change them by persuading others at the ballot box. That's surely the right way to do it. I don't like the way California's run, but I love living here and I don't want to move. So I'm going to fight to change it. It wouldn't enter my head to try and get the Supreme Court to impose, I don't know, school choice in California, to pick one example of many. For as long as I've been in politics, I've argued for the decentralization of power, putting power directly in people's hands wherever possible. Where that's not possible, putting power at the lowest practical level of government, as close to the people as we can get it. That's why I'm for school choice. That's why I was for Brexit. That's why I love America and our Constitution. And that's why this week was actually a reassertion of something that is fundamental about America: decentralization of power. The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution are reserved to the states or to the people. And so what I want to know is why it's just this issue that is, in the phrase we've heard a lot in the last few days, going back to the states. What about all the other areas of policy where, to quote the Declaration this time, we've seen a long train of abuses and usurpations? When are we going to return education fully to the states? When are we going to return healthcare to the states, welfare policy, all the rest of it, everything the federal government does that is not in the Constitution, all of it should be returned to the states in full. That is the next revolution we need. Tell us what you think at Steve Hilton X and at NextRevFNC, and share this message when we post it.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.